So, Sami, how has the recent conflict affected Christian families and communities in the Holy Land, both materially and spiritually? And what are the most immediate needs that you see arising from the current situation as Chief Executive of the Latin Patriarchate?
Sure. Well, thank you, Brendan, for giving me the opportunity. The war, which is over 1 year old now, basically has been very devastating on all communities in general, but in a very particular way on the Christian community, uh, particularly because of the fact that, especially on the West Bank, that many Christian families rely on the tourism sector, pilgrimages in particular, and that industry in particular collapsed almost completely from the first day of the war. And with each passing day, I think these families are feeling the heat more and more. So unemployment really has shot up dramatically since the beginning of the war. In addition to, of course, all the difficulties of travel, settler violence on the West Bank, inability of people to receive their salaries from the Palestinian Authority, given that there are no tax revenues transfers between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, and given that the permits in Israel have been completely, in a sense, revoked, and thus many Christian families as well had permits to work in Israel proper, in Jerusalem, in various jobs. So put all that together, the families have been dramatically affected. Christian families have been dramatically affected, not only in Bethlehem, but throughout the West Bank in a particular way, economically. Spiritually, I think people are affected as well because of the traumatic conditions that we all live in. Continuation of the war, inability to travel freely, lack of any economic security, and so on and so forth. So the church continues to do what it can to support these families spiritually and materially as well. That is as far as the West Bank is concerned. As far as Gaza is concerned, of course, we are saddened to continue to see the war over 1 year old. Basically, we have about 650 Christians left in Gaza now. We lost probably 250 people when the borders were still open with Egypt. We have 45 people who have lost their lives since the beginning of the war, some due to direct hostilities, others due to medical neglect. So we try to do what we can to support these communities materially as far as Gaza is concerned. We are doing our utmost to ensure that they are sufficiently stocked with food and medicine and water and whatever their basic daily needs. But it's an uphill battle basically to be able to do that.
So you are currently still able to get help into Gaza? I know it's difficult, but you are able to.
Correct. That is with the aid of our partners, the Knights of Malta, basically, that aid has been possible, basically. Just last week, we were able to secure a shipment of approximately 80 tons. And that is a combination of fresh fruits and vegetables, in addition to non-perishable food items, and that was significant. And certainly, considering the size of the Christian population in Gaza, you bet that the 80 tons really goes to support the wider community in a sense. So over 7,000 families that live in the immediate vicinity of the church. Considering, Brendan, that as well as Israel is cleansing, in their own terminology, not mine, the northern part of Gaza. Basically, then you have a huge influx of people from the northern part of the extreme northern part of Gaza into the more central, basically, which is Gaza City, which is the area where the parish is located. So aid has stopped from all direction, basically, to the northern part. And apart from what we were able to send in last week, then people really are on the verge of starvation. So we're not there only to support the Christian community. We have been, I think, with the aid of many of our friends, been able to support the wider community as well.
Yeah. I mean, I know we've sent you, since the war began, about 150,000 that way. So going back to the West Bank, in terms of immediate needs, I know that the local parishes are clubbing together and helping those who are most vulnerable with things like food coupons, food packages, and a lot of our support has been more along helping with emergency medical care and people who need medications, routine medications. I mean, what do you see as the most pressing needs in the West Bank? I mean, because I know it's interesting to me, you mentioned the whole of the West Bank, because Bethlehem, traditionally people know tourism is in Bethlehem, not so much up in Ramallah and places. But obviously, what people forget is in those places, there was a lot of work in Israel. There was a lot of trading into Israel, and that's all stopped as well.
Also,
So,
correct.
so everybody is affected as badly. So, I mean, where do you see the most pressing needs at the moment?
They're all over the place, Brendan, in all honesty, in any direction you think. I mean, as this war has become quite a extended war in a sense that the needs are in all directions. So around Christmas time, for example, we intend to intensify our food coupon distribution because people are really very, very needy. And we intend not only to increase the number of families, but also to increase the size of each food coupon, practically almost doubling it, I think, in some areas, to ensure families at least will have, a secure period during Christmas time. And you've mentioned all the rest, medical
Mm, mm,
support,
mm,
medicines or chronic illnesses, housing support, utilities support in some areas where people cannot even pay their water bill or electric bill. Uh, Tuition support. People cannot afford to pay the tuition of their children in schools, and the whole work. So, the whole spectrum. But where I feel, honestly, the greatest need is to try to provide as much as possible dignified employment for people. And I think Friends of the Holy Land really was notorious in a sense and very helpful from the early days of the war in providing a grant for the AFAC program in particular, which is basically our partnership with Bethlehem University to reach out to people who have lost their employment during the war, to be able to provide things like internships for several months and allow them to live a dignified life and secure their income that way. And thus, basically, where people really are sort of reaching out to us by, incredibly large numbers, really is to provide employment or some income generation possibilities to be able to live a dignified life and without having to actually reach out for, sort of give away support from the church.
mm. Well, it's interesting because you're picking up on the other area I was going to ask you about because we've worked over many, many years together. And, we've already in the last year, you mentioned the employment program, the entrepreneurship program with small businesses. We've done water tanks together up in Zababde, which I think is pretty finished now, I think, that program
Right.
and uh, alongside your grant for employment support. So we have a similar program going across the West Bank where we're employing people for 3 months to work in the community. So they're given the dignity of work, but it has the added benefit of um, helping the community because we're supporting some of them to work in local Christian organizations to create to give aid and support.
Sure.
So, I mean, where do you see over the next, say, 3 to 6 months with the Latin Patriarchate? I mean, any areas where we can work together specifically on those kind of social missions that you would encourage us
Sure.
to be involved
Yes, absolutely. I think around Christmas time, that's a time of giving, in a sense. So we have to re-intensify our humanitarian intervention, basically, depending on what the need is. And Christmas lends itself really for giving and putting a smile on people's face, in a sense. So that I think within the next 2 months, in a sense, that would be a priority for us. Thereafter, of course, we will re-engage into the job creation area. I think that is the area that one really needs to keep in mind as we move forward. With each passing month, I think families who have had any savings put aside really find themselves in an economic bind because most of their savings are gone. Permits are not reissued. Basically, the economic situation is not improving. On the contrary, I think with the passage of the 2025 budget in the State of Israel, it promises increased taxation, higher cost of living, basically. So we expect a new round. That will not only affect Israel and East Jerusalem in a sense, because that will have the ripple effect when prices go up on West Bank prices, because the economy is so tied together in a sense. So we expect 2025 to be a very, very challenging situation, I think, for all concerned. And I think we need to really move in that direction of income generation, small business development, entrepreneurship, capacity building, to allow people really to, find new hope in maybe a new trade, a new employment as we move forward.
Yeah, and let's not forget that, from what I understand, because the Palestinian Authority is struggling with its own finances,
Absolutely.
public sector workers are not getting paid their salaries.
Correct.
So there's need even for people who would be seen to be in secure jobs.
Correct.
So in this time of crisis, I mean, how can international donors and supporters best contribute, do you feel, to ensuring the safety, stability, and hope of Christian communities in the region? I mean, what do you think is the specific impact of philanthropy in these critical times?
Sure, absolutely. I think we are almost completely dependent on external support for the various programs that we have mentioned today. And I think continued support in all of these areas is critical as we move forward. So, the financial support is important. The solidarity is important. I think Christian communities need to feel that the world has not abandoned them, that the world continues to, keep them in their thoughts and in their prayers. That is critical as well, and I think sometimes that goes, beyond the material support as well. So what we would ask really is that whatever also, in addition to material support, whatever pressure could be put on, decision makers in our region to move in a direction of stopping the war and, moving forward towards a solution to this never-ending problem between Israel and Palestine, to ensure that you ultimately would reach a peaceful resolution and justice will prevail for all.
And one other thing on this whole area of the work coming from the Christian-run organizations, not just the Latin Patriarchate, but there's so many Christian-run organizations across the West Bank particularly, but even across the whole of the Holy Land. I mean, when we last spoke, you gave me a figure that was, to me, surprising given the size of the population, because, the population in Israel is about 2%. Before the war in the West Bank, it was less than 1%, and we know people have left. But you were telling me that roughly half of the Palestinian community, the whole Palestinian community of what, 4 million in the West Bank, is being reached by Christian-run organizations in their pastoral mission and given support. I mean, is that something that, obviously to me, that's an amazing testament to the pastoral work of the Christian community. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure, absolutely. I think in Palestine alone, there is close to 300 organizations that are, Christian-based organizations, and of the various denominations. I think the largest is the Catholic Church, basically, and its contributions. But over 300 institutions working in particular in three main sectors, basically in education, in healthcare, and social services, whereby the services that are provided by these institutions touches approximately 45 to 50% of the Palestinian population. If you look at the Latin Patriarchate network of schools alone, 44 schools basically serving close to 20,000 students. This is only one organization in a sense. And certainly, I think what we pride ourselves with is that these organizations, although they are Christian-based, the services are provided to everyone who has a need, in a sense. But what characterizes it, I think, absolutely, is the value set within which the service is delivered. So, what else do you hear the message of, coexistence and, reconciliation and forgiveness and love and peace, other than our Christian institutions, while the word on the street is one of revenge and killing and destruction. So that gives you a sense, I think, not only of the sheer number of people that is being served by Christian institutions, but more importantly, what is the message that is delivered, and what impact that message has, at a time of destruction and war and so on. So we're very proud, really, of our contributions to the building of societies wherever we exist.
And I think, Sammy, to echo that even more, I mean, in a time of war, in a time when people are hoping for peace and reconciliation, secular organizations could work with these Christian-run organizations, which have traditionally always had that message of peace, reconciliation, non-violence, and based on the ethos of people living together rather than what could happen, which is more of a polarization within a community. I think that's something, and we're very proud as Friends of the Holy Land because we're registered as a charity in Palestine. So, in our own small way, we're part of those organizations that you're talking about and working
Absolutely.
alongside.
Right.
So, Sammy, just to sort of wrap up our conversation today, what message would you like to give to uh, Christian communities here in the UK and our supporters of what message of resilience or hope can you convey regarding what you see as a future for the Holy Land, especially in these turbulent times at the moment?
Sure, Brendan, I'm very optimistic, truly, that the church will emerge from this war, from this crisis, stronger than it has ever been, as it has done in previous wars. This land, unfortunately, have had its share of wars and crises and intifadas and whatever you want to put terminology on it. And every time, I think the church was shining during the active wars or whatever disturbances, basically, in never shying away from being that beacon of hope, being that support for the communities, and it has always, I think, emerged in stronger as a stronger entity in a sense than before the war. So my message really is optimistic. We are here. We will continue to be here. We feel passionately about the mission that we are set out to do. Both religious and lay people hand in hand working together, basically to ensure that we continue to build up our societies with the Christian values at heart. So it's a message of hope, really, for the future, despite all the negativeness, all the blackness that you see around you. This war will end, and hopefully we will be responding, I think, post-war in a much more bigger and better way than we've ever done in the past. So it's a message of hope for the future.
And Sammy, I know that comes not only from you at the Latin Patriarchate, but you're a member of one of the most uh, uh, historic families in Jerusalem that can trace your heritage back so many years. So it's a privilege speaking to you, and it's always a privilege to have you as a good friend for Friends of the Holy Land.